Thanksgiving had always been a quiet affair for Aaron and his family. They lived in a small town, tucked away from the bustle of the city. This year, Aaron was driving home alone from college for the holiday. His parents had moved to a more rural area a few years back, and the drive was mostly empty roads and long stretches of woods. The sun had just set, casting an eerie glow over the trees as Aaron pulled onto the narrow gravel driveway that led to his parents' house. The house itself was older, a bit run down, but it had character. Aaron always loved how peaceful it felt. As he parked the car and stepped out, the cold November air bit at his skin. He grabbed his bag from the trunk and walked toward the front door. The house was dark except for the faint glow of a light in the living room window. Strange. His mom usually had the house lit up when he came home. He knocked, expecting his mom or dad to swing open the door with a big, welcoming smile. But nothing. No sound of footsteps, no movement. After a few seconds, he turned the knob and let himself in. The house was colder than usual, almost like the heat hadn't been turned on at all. "Mom? Dad?" he called out, his voice echoing through the empty rooms. Still nothing. Aaron flicked on the lights, the sudden brightness harsh in the dim house. Everything seemed normal at first. His mom's decorative plates were still hanging on the walls, the usual family pictures on the mantel, the faint smell of Thanksgiving food lingering in the air, but there was something unsettling about how quiet it was. He walked into the kitchen. On the counter, there was a half-prepared turkey, its skin still pale, the stuffing left out in bowls. His mom had clearly started dinner but hadn't finished. That wasn't like her at all. She was always the one to make sure everything was done perfectly. Aaron checked the living room, the dining room, even his parents' bedroom. No one. It was as if they'd just disappeared in the middle of the day. A chill ran down his spine and he grabbed his phone to call them. But the call went straight to voicemail. Something felt wrong. Very wrong. Deciding to check outside, Aaron grabbed a flashlight and headed toward the back of the house. The yard backed up to a thick forest that stretched for miles. He shone the light around, the beam cutting through the dark, but there was no sign of anyone. Just as he was about to turn back inside, he heard it, a rustling sound, faint but clear, coming from the trees. Aaron froze, heart racing as he stared into the woods. The beam of his flashlight scanned the tree line, but everything seemed still. Maybe it was just an animal, he thought, trying to calm himself. But the sound came again, this time louder, closer. "Mom? Dad?" he called out again. But only the sound of the wind rustling the leaves responded. He took a few cautious steps toward the woods, the flashlight flickering slightly in the cold air. The rustling grew louder. And then, without warning, something darted between the trees. Fast, too fast to be a person. Aaron's stomach dropped. He felt a cold sweat break out on his forehead. His parents wouldn't have gone into the woods this late, especially not without coats or flashlights. He backed away slowly, heading for the house. That's when he saw it. In the distance, near the edge of the forest, something, or someone, was standing. At first it was just a shadow, barely visible in the darkness. But as Aaron's eyes adjusted, he could see it more clearly. It was tall, too tall to be human, and its limbs were unnaturally long. It just stood there, motionless, watching him. Panic set in. Aaron bolted for the back door, slamming it shut behind him and locking it. His breath came in short, panicked gasps as he leaned against the door, his mind racing. What had he just seen? Was someone playing a sick joke on him? He grabbed his phone again, this time calling the police. As he dialed, a sudden knock came from the front door. 3 slow, deliberate knocks. Aaron's heart leapt into his throat. He crept toward the door, his hand shaking as he looked through the peephole. There was no one there, but the knocking continued, louder now, more insistent. He backed away, his mind screaming at him to run, to hide, but his legs felt like lead. The knocking stopped. Silence filled the house again, but it didn't last long. From the living room, Aaron heard the creak of a floorboard. Someone, or something, was inside. He grabbed the nearest object, a fireplace poker, and backed toward the hallway, keeping his eyes on the living room doorway. The sound of slow, heavy footsteps filled the air, getting closer and closer. A shadow appeared at the edge of the doorway, and for a moment, Aaron thought he was seeing things. But then it stepped into the light. It wasn't human. The figure was tall, just like what he had seen in the woods, its face pale and stretched tight over its bones, with eyes that glowed faintly in the dim light. It stood there, watching him, its mouth curling into a strange, unnatural grin. Aaron didn't wait to see what it would do next. He bolted down the hallway, locking himself in the bedroom, heart pounding so hard he thought it might burst out of his chest. The footsteps followed, slow and deliberate, stopping just outside the door. And then, just like that, everything went quiet again. No footsteps, no knocking, just silence. Aaron stayed in that room until morning. When he finally worked up the courage to open the door, the house was empty just as it had been the night before. His parents were gone, and he never found out what happened to them or what that thing was. If this story gave you chills, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more terrifying tales. What's the scariest thing that's ever happened to you on a holiday? Let us know in the comments below.